technology? Is technology only video games and all this social media that's being promoted in America, much of which is promoting violence, promoting the insulting people and making this part of a culture? No. Technology also involves how we're going to address the environmental issues. We do have the technology to have clean energy. We need to apply that technology and scale it. We do have the technology to eliminate massive amount of diseases and things that we take for granted as uncurable today, but the money is not being applied to that because of the nature of the capital market, and the debt market is putting the money toward a lot of entertainment technology. Things that we think of, social media things, are not qualified today within the intellectual level of innovations actually being technology. It's old-fashioned stuff, but that's where the capital is going. It's not going into the real things and addressing the needs of people. And this is where there's an opportunity for that, because these are nations that have come out from development, from underdevelopment. Many of them are now facing these challenges, but China has come out of underdevelopment. It is now a developed country, and it has the experience to be able to impart these issues of infrastructure and foundations of technology that these other nations can now benefit in their own paths forward, while allowing them to find their own individual paths forward. That's the opportunity the SCO gives us today.
Right, since you mentioned Nepal, I want to talk about connectivity. At the end of the last year, I went to Nepal and Pakistan. I wanted to fly from Kathmandu to Islamabad, but I have to transfer through Mumbai or Abu Dhabi, and that's an overnight flight. But from the map, it was just like 4 or 5 hours for a direct flight. What's happening there?
You know, when we were meeting in Kathmandu this year at the Himalayan Consensus Summit, a big topic was aeronautic connectivity. Right now, you do not have, this type of travel facility. And this is the first stage. I mean, even if you look back again on the China example, I remember when it was so difficult to fly from Beijing to Xi'an. There were only a couple of flights a week. This is going back in the early 80s. And you think about so many cities were not connected. Now you can fly anywhere, anytime. The connectivity has created the foundation for the economic prosperity. In turn, the infrastructure, the building of airports, smart transport has all created more connectivity, and in turn with it more trade, more opportunity, and with this you see the foundations of a sustainable and futuristic economic development. That has to happen in these regions. That has to happen across South Asia, Central Asia. This is a huge block in development right now that the SCO and the sharing of experiences in development and sequencing that development can benefit. And I was really surprised, very pleasantly, to hear the Pakistan president talk about the idea of a visa for countries who are doing business with each other that can be an inter-country visa. Well, suddenly,
like what ASEAN is already doing.
Suddenly businessmen in Kashmir on both sides of the line of control can start to trade. I mean, suddenly, we hold our meeting in Kathmandu. Why? Because in so many different countries, the other countries can't get visas. That's a country, Nepal, which is relatively open compared to everybody else. But if suddenly you have the facility of visas and openness, and if these barriers can come down, wow, this is going to be one of the most dynamic regions in the world without any question at all.
To make physical connectivity work, how important is the political factor here? Because earlier we were talking about Nepal, Pakistan, and India. You have to take politics into consideration, right, Mr. Tang?
Yeah, this is actually another side of the coin. Political trust, of course, is very important for all the countries in such a cooperation. But I think we can improve such a condition. For example, more business, more trade might give some positive driving forces to the political development or political trust among all the parties concerned. And I think this is actually a lesson learned from the development in China. When China started its open up, and some countries still worried about what we can do with such a big country. And after nearly 40 years development and open up, I'm sure today almost all the countries in the world would like to have trade relations with China, and most of the countries in the world actually take China as the #1 trade partner. So I think this is actually interaction between politics and economy. If countries like India and Pakistan and other countries in this region can give very good relations in trade, of course they can have some changes in their political or security dilemma.
What about some actual projects to make that scenario happen in the near future? Talking about trade, we can see that the idea of dry ports is booming on China's border with SCO members. For example, the Korgos dry port at China's border with Kazakhstan has been developing really fast. Do you think we're going to see more of that in the near future?
Yeah, I think the big obstacle we are facing now is, as our gentleman mentioned, the infrastructure. Actually, in some countries, still very poor. And I paid visit to Laos, and I found that the road, something like the road in China in 1980s, and of course there are large requirements for the countries to improve their infrastructure. And Laos today, I think recently has got some funding from the Road and Belt Initiative funding, and will give that country a very important driving force to develop its or improve its new infrastructure. So I think such a cooperation, in infrastructure construction, will give China, will give India, will give Pakistan, and even ASEAN countries a very important new area to go ahead.
And at this summit, I also heard some leaders in their speeches talking about this idea, mentioning frequently about this idea of Eurasian development. For example, Russian President Vladimir Putin also said that China and Russia are going to issue some new plan on Eurasian development. Now, this is idea that's been said by some that for the past 500 years, trade was taking place on the seas, on the high seas. But in the near future, if the Eurasian land bridge could be connected, then trade will take place on this massive continent. That will change the global landscape completely. Do you think that's a practical idea?
Of course, because again, when we have the high-speed rails moving through, when we have the transport connectivity, the game changes. Why did the Silk Road fall into disuse? There were two technological advancements. One was high seas boats that could, sail quickly, and effective use of gunpowder, and being able to then colonize. And so then the land routes fell into disuse. As the land routes fell into disuse, communities became isolated again. They became distant from each other, and you had a breakdown in all the communication, culture, and in terms of trade. And of course, that was then, the system under the colonial and the post-colonial New Order or Old World Order, as it is now, was, the mainstay. Now, technological advancement with high-speed rail networks, advanced road networks, communication systems is bringing back the Silk Road. So now that is making it a more efficient means of transportation, of communication. With that, even where we have borders that are existing borders where there's difficulties that are not yet resolved, if you start to have cross-border trade through special economic zones, we adopt this economic zone approach, processing zone, trade zone approach, which China adopted in its own years of opening and reform. This will begin to bring down barriers and to create pockets of prosperity that can then be widened when the time allows for that. And of course, being able to extend this bridge going right across Central Asia, Turkey, Russia, into Europe. It's opening up huge opportunities for also Europe as well to begin to look east more than west, and turning the other direction in the Middle East. I mean, Iran's involvement now, their future ascendancy as a full member of SCO, is going to be opening up that entire direction and opportunities. And so we see now a emerging New World Order. We can call it, again, a Silk Road consensus, one that's built on fundamentals of infrastructure, economic development, the alleviation of poverty, and very important, economic empowerment for communities and respect for people's identity.
Right. While we're talking about that, we're seeing live footage from Qingdao. That's the venue for the 18th SCO Summit. Participating leaders have just concluded a large-scale members meeting. And according to the schedule, they are expected to meet the press together, and Chinese President Xi Jinping will also deliver a speech to the press very soon. And participating countries are going to sign the Qingdao Declaration, highlighting the Shanghai spirit, of course, the core values of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in 17 years of running. And also, the leader in their keynote speeches, as we were talking about, leaders focused on many aspects of the organization's main tasks. For example, we just talked about trade, economic development, and security, where the organization started. And talking about something new earlier, you were talking about something new, a new idea to world order and world politics. And when you talk about something new, there will be something outdated. For example, in his speech, President Xi Jinping listed some outdated ideas: clashes of civilizations, Cold War mentality, and the zero-sum game. And also in economics, I'd like to really discuss about this competitive advantage. Because if you trace back this idea, it could be traced back to British Empire, when the subcontext of this idea is that there is a dominant role behind the stage, and then set up this so-called competitive advantage to each and every country according to our geographical or population status. So in the spirit of Shanghai cooperation that emphasizes on collaboration and cooperation, do you think this idea should be updated a little bit, at least?
Well, first of all, I think the whole idea is, as President Xi said, a clash of civilizations is an antique idea. It needs to be put in a museum because the history of the Silk Road is one of civilizations collaborating, integration, exchange of ideas. The more you look at it, the more you dig up the history, the more you find that there was huge amounts of exchanges of ideas, not only in terms of trade and culture, but also science at that time. So we have the foundations for even today's technology linkages that are going to be the future here. And it's also a zero-sum, winner, loser. There's this idea, in America first, duality. This is again, these ideas are thinking. They're very colonial. They're very post-colonial in the respect that there's going to be always one central ideal or one central value. Values among people and cultural ways of living differ depending on the topography. Many things that people in different cultures do that may be strange to another culture have to do with the topography of the place, the conditions, the environment, and people's own evolutionary response to that. And so respecting and realizing that cultures have more to gain from integration and from learning from each other than from trying to put down another culture is very, very core. And I think it's a very core principle of what we heard from the leaders around the room today. And with that also then you talk about your economic integration. And this is where this concept of a shared common destiny of mankind comes in. Ultimately, if I'm going to benefit, you have to benefit too. If it's only going to be for one, if it's a colonial extraction mentality, oh, I'm going to take all your resources, I'm going to sell you processed goods made from your resources, and then I'm going to create a situation where you come into debt. This is an imbalanced, distorted way of thinking. And if you start to think in terms of, okay, if my neighbor has economic development, I'm going to have a more secure border with that neighbor. If we start to think this way, then we're looking at a much different approach, and this is where the Asian value comes in. The Asian value has got to be about common sharing, community, and of course also people caring about the environment. Ultimately, the environment takes care of people. In all the shamanistic cultures and different local cultures across Russia, Central Asia, the traditional thinking, people pray to snow-capped mountains. Why? Because the water comes from the mountain. I mean, it's ecology. There's reasons for this. And these ecological ways of thinking are traditionally embedded. That was changed by the Industrial Revolution. That was a Western concept. We can destroy our environment for industrial benefit, for material benefit. And suddenly this Newtonian thinking of dividing between what is natural and what's science or what is material has created a lot of duality in thinking. That's not part of Asian culture, and it's shared all the way from Turkey, from Russia, Central Asia to China, across to Asia, is a concept of non-duality, of collaborative, yin and yang. It's not black and white, you're right, I'm wrong, it's gray. And I think that is going to be the essence of this. It's not going to be discriminatory, but it's going to be collaborative. And that's why I say the idea of clash of civilizations has to go into a museum.
And talking about collaboration, Mr. Teng, looking at the SCO's fast development in recent years, what do you think the development tell about President Xi Jinping's idea of building a community of shared future for all mankind?
Yeah, as actually we discussed before just now, the new tendencies we are facing now, for example, the multipolarization of international politics did give some new requirements for the international community to think about how can we deal with the challenges not only in politics but also in security and the economy. For example, the financial crisis started from 2008 in the United States, and even today the European countries are still suffering a lot from such a financial crisis, and so I think the international community should go together to deal with such challenges and environment, climate change. But some countries today, for example, the United States, gave a very protectionist attitude toward these cooperation. I don't think that's a good way. For the sake of the United States, for the sake of other countries in the world, we should have a new vision toward the new challenges, and this is the only way for us to go ahead.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll be getting back to you very soon. As we've touched upon quite regularly, the SCO expanded last year with the formal acceptance of India and Pakistan as full members. Chinese President Xi Jinping stressed the importance of their presence at this year's summit and that China was ready to put its financial backing behind the organization's strategic goals. Zhou Ying has more.
The SCO has been a comprehensive regional organization since its foundation, and this year, India and Pakistan are making their full debut at the annual summit as formal members. This morning, Chinese President Xi Jinping said the organization needed to take advantage of the enlargement while addressing the leaders of the bloc.
The expansion with India and Pakistan has provided fresh vitalities to this organization and also opened up new space for cooperation. We need to further deepen unity and mutual trust, step up mutual support, and make sure that the potential and opportunities brought about by the enlargement will be translated into tangible deliverables.
This year's host city, Qingdao, has a special relationship with the SCO, a strategic port at the end of the Belt and Road route. The Chinese government decided it would install the country's first demonstration area there, as it looks to promote more economic and trade activity within the bloc. And President Xi said China would do all it could to ensure its success.
The Chinese government supports the opening of a demonstration area in Qingdao for China-SCO local economic and trade cooperation, and will set up a committee of legal services for SCO member states to provide legal support for business cooperation. In conjunction with this, I hereby announce that China will set up an 30 billion RMB equivalent special lending facility within the framework of the SCO Interbank Consortium.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held an informal meeting with President Xi in Wuhan in late April, when both leaders agreed to put their differences aside and concentrate on their common interest. He also spoke at a leaders' meeting in Qingdao.
SCO Summit.
This year's SCO Summit holds special significance for India since it's the first time that we are participating as a full member. This is indeed a priceless opportunity for us to promote the various elements of the Shanghai spirit along with other SCO members.
The SCO countries have been making great efforts to integrate the new members of Pakistan and India into this mechanism as smooth as possible. It's highly hoped that the new measures and plans from the summit will help to guide the group into a new era of development and cooperation. So Yun, CGTN reporting from Qingdao, Shandong Province.
Now let's cross live to Qingdao, to the venue of the 18th SCO Summit. Leaders are signing major documents.
The Qingdao Declaration of the SCO member states has a State Council meeting. Second, decision on adoption of Action Plan 2018 to 2022 and implementation of provisions of the Treaty on Long-Term Good Neighborliness, Friendship and Cooperation of the SCO member states. Third, decision on adoption of program of cooperation of the SCO member states in countering terrorism, separatism, and extremism for 2019 to 2021. Fourth, decision on adoption of the SCO member states anti-drug strategy 2018 to 2023 and a program of action for its implementation. Fifth, decision on adoption of the SCO concept on prevention of abuse of narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. Sixth, decision on elaboration of a draft program of cooperation of the SCO member states on food security. Seventh, decision on adoption of the concept of cooperation of the SCO member states in the field of environmental protection. Eighth, decision on adoption of the program of action for implementation of provisions of the SCO member states heads of state joint appeal to youth. Ninth, decision on adoption of the report of the SCO Secretary General on the organization's activities over the past year. 10th, decision on adoption of the report of the SCO RATS Council on the SCO Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure Activities in 2017. 11th, decision on signing MOU between the SCO and UNESCO 2018 to 2022. 12th, decision on the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Secretary General. 13th, decision on the SCO Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure Executive Committee Director.
You're watching live footage from Qingdao. Leaders attending this year's SCO Summit are signing a series of major documents. These are considered as major achievements of the 18th Summit of the SCO. Of course, standing at the centerpiece is the Qingdao Declaration. That is the pivot document in the achievement of this year's summit. Also, there are many other documents regarding...
The Qingdao Summit has also adopted the following 4 documents. First, the SCO member states heads of state joint appeal to youth. Second, the SCO heads of state statement on joint countering threat of epidemics within the area of the SCO. Third, the SCO member states heads of state joint statement on trade facilitation. And fourth, the SCO heads of state council meeting press release.
This is an agreement signing ceremony in Qingdao happening during the 18th SCO Summit. Leaders of SCO members have signed the Qingdao Declaration, which stands as the centerpiece of the achievement for this year's gathering. Also, there's wide-ranging agreements covering issues like friendly neighborliness, and also the fight against so-called three evil forces, namely separatism, extremism, and terrorism. Also, leaders also signed agreements on trade, food security, youth work, and even epidemics. What do you make of these achievements so far, Mr. Tung?
I think the more consensus have been reached by the leaders this time. After this summit, I'm sure all the states, including the member states, observers, and the partners will, follow the roadmap adopted by the leaders today, and they will expand their cooperation in various aspects. For example, in politics, they will continue the momentum to enhance the mutual trust, and in security, I'm sure there should be some pragmatic steps, including joint military drills against three evil forces, and in economy, of course, that should be speed up for the cooperation in various areas, in connectivities, in infrastructure, in financial sector, and also in trade. So I think this is a new stage for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization that may have a more clear-cut direction, and more cooperations, and more exchanges of people to people in the future.
And gentlemen, if we take a close look at these agreements, they are about the big picture. They're about values, for example, the Qingdao Declaration, but they're also about specific areas and even people's well-being. For example, there's an agreement on cooperation to curb epidemics among member states, and this agreement on SCO's efforts in engaging young people, the youth in member states. What do you make of these efforts?
Well, the youth are the future, and of course epidemics is a commonly shared problem. It's a very pragmatic issue.
And food security as well, right?
Food security. What you see happening here right now, what we are witnessing, is the establishment of a organizational framework for the Belt and Road Initiative. Remember, the Belt and Road Initiative, we talked about 70 member countries. These are countries that simply signed a memorandum saying they wanted to participate in that initiative as a vision. Those were very, very general memorandums. Now we see with these agreements actually addressing very, very pragmatic issues not only of development but health, of empowering youth for the future, food security, water, environmental issues. All of these are the nuts and bolts, the bones of the body of an organizational structure that can now make the Belt and Road Initiative a reality. And that's what's happening right now in this room. That's what we're witnessing.
So can we say that a synergy is being built up between the SCO as a more political framework and Belt and Road Initiative as a pragmatic framework? Can we say that?
Yeah, this is a very important point for the countries concerned to cooperate in every aspect that we discussed just now. I think Road and Belt Initiative is not a physical road, is a spiritual road of cooperation, and that will give all the countries, not only in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but other countries in various regions, that they could have some benefit from such a cooperation. So I think this is really integrity of the initiative and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization roadmap for the future.
Again, we get back to where the SCO started, security. We can see the agreement signed this time has a very specific time frame. That's from 2019 to 2021. So long-term speaking, do you think security will be a sustaining challenge in this particular part of the world?
You're right. I think, as we discussed just now, the three evil forces are still there, and the challenges are there. So I think we should, take new steps to cooperate in combat these challenges. For example, anti-terrorism, the anti-separatism in Central Asia and in China. We're still facing the same challenges for this. The separatism is still there. And I think security, of course, is a condition for the regional stability and also for domestic development. Just imagine if there were a terrorist attack. So this is not only a physical destruction of a building. This is psychological, strike on the ordinary people. So I think all the countries in Shanghai Cooperation Organization have addressed the importance to cooperate in dealing with the security challenges. This is a very important part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Let's talk about values and the just signed Qingdao Declaration, which is considered to be the centerpiece of the summit, highlighting the Shanghai spirit. What do you think is exactly the Shanghai spirit?
The Shanghai spirit, as we discussed just now, for example, mutual trust, mutual benefit, equality, and respect to different civilizations. And
Mr. Bram thinks respect is the key idea.
Yeah. I think that this time we should have a new, vision toward these spirits. For example, with the wide use of information technology, can we have new, innovation for the organization? Of course, I think we can, because such a development gave a very strong, driving force to the cooperation among the member states, and I'm sure after this summit, all the countries in this area can go, in a very clear-cut blueprint, and the cooperation in various aspects will be enhanced in the future.
So earlier, Mr. Bram, you said respect is the key idea here, and you said it's even the key idea of Confucianism. But in Confucianism, it's about respect. It's also about self-discipline. So international politics, how important is self-discipline right now? Sorry, let's go back
now
to
the leaders will witness the signing of 4 documents. I'll ask the representatives of member states to take their seats.
You're watching live footage from the eastern Chinese city of Qingdao.
They will be signing the MOU on promoting cooperation within the SCO in the field of micro, small, and medium enterprises among the SCO member states' ministries in charge of foreign economic and trade activities.
So, Mr. Bram, let's talk a little bit more about what's happening right now. SCO member countries are signing an agreement on the cooperation among the organization and countries' small and medium-sized companies. Why it's so important?
Because it's with the small and medium-sized corporations that you begin to have innovation and opportunity. And this is, traditionally a lot of the countries in the group, in the case of the Central Asian countries, Russia, came from an old state plan system. So those large state-backed corporations, heavy corporations, the same as with China, have traditionally been the leaders. But they're not the ones who are innovating. They're the status quo. And innovation comes with small enterprises. Whether it's technology, environment, trade, business, this is where opportunity is needed. But these companies have trouble getting finance, and this is really key. And so now by supporting the small, medium-sized enterprises, this is giving opportunity not only to the enterprises, but to the youth and the next generations who are going to build those enterprises and make them big.
So earlier we talked a little bit about financial framework within the SCO, but that's on a macro scale. So specifically in helping small and medium-sized companies, what measures are you expecting?
Well, that's one piece of it. Financing is going to be part of that. Again, bringing down trade barriers is another. But are we going to be looking at a special capital market for the SCO at some point, with SCO enterprises listed on that capital market. We're looking at the kind of, we're talking about an SCO development bank. We're talking about a potential reserve currency for the Belt and Road. This is the future. This is where it's going to go. These are the elements that are really going to make this whole thing a game changer.
But talking about Belt and Road Initiative, there are already some financial institutions under that. For example, the AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and the Silk Road Foundation. Since you've mentioned the synergy between the SCO and the BRI, do you think eventually there will be a merger between the two, even the financial institutions and mechanisms?
Well, there's no need for a merger between the New Development Bank, AIIB, and a SCO Development Bank, because these will have different functions and different focuses. The scale of development needs are so great, and what happens with these institutions is they have separate portfolios, they have different agendas and focus, but what will happen is you will have projects that will have multi-financing, and so you may have several institutions that are coming together, what we call in finance a club lunch, and putting together a package and financing a particular project. And that's even open for old world order institutions like the World Bank and Asian Development Bank. I'm sure they're going to have an opportunity to come into this type of financing arrangements as well. It's not going to, I don't foresee it being exclusive, but I do see it as being driven, homegrown driven. And that's what we see right now.
And I believe also a bilateral or multilateral investment is also very important in this bid. For example, in his speech, Pakistani President Hussein mentioned that last year Pakistan has attracted the largest amount of private investment overseas in history. So as the framework becomes more mature, do you think that could be cases for more member countries?
Well, what happens is when you have a situation where you have underdevelopment or you have had an isolationism, your starting point is lower. And so when you open the doors, you create, in the case of Pakistan, a more stability, a more stable investment environment. It's like a magnet. It attracts opportunity. And if we look at this entire, scope of this, revived Silk Road, this is all about opportunity. And so once you have stability and security, and that is clear through economic development, and you have the infrastructure, the connectivity we've talked about, rail connectivity, trade connectivity, some barriers coming down, air connectivity, you're going to have a lot of business.
Right, let's cross live.
That's the end of the signing ceremony. Thank you.
Leaders have just signed all the major documents from the summit.
Distinguished guests, the joint press conference now begins. I have the honor to invite His Excellency President Xi Jinping to make a statement on behalf of the SCO member states' leaders. Distinguished colleagues, friends from the press, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to meet with you. Leaders of the member and observer states of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and heads of international and regional organizations have gathered here at the beautiful coast of the Yellow Sea to draw up a blueprint for the SCO's development as it enters a new phase in history. We have had an in-depth exchange of views on major international and regional issues and reached broad consensus. During this summit, we have fully recognized the new progress made by our organization since the accession of India and Pakistan. We have issued several documents, including the Qingdao Declaration of the Council of Heads of Member States of the SCO and the joint statement of the heads of member states of the SCO on promoting trade facilitation. And we have ratified an action plan for implementing the Treaty on Long-Term Good Neighborliness, Friendship and Cooperation of the SCO member states covering the next 5 years. We have agreed to abide by the goals and principles of the SCO Charter, carry forward the Shanghai spirit of mutual trust, mutual benefit, equality, consultation, respect for diversity of civilizations, and pursuit of common development, and jointly pursue regional peace, stability, and development by promoting good neighborliness and friendship and deepening practical cooperation. We share the view that the world is undergoing major development, transformation, and adjustment. The trend toward multipolarity and economic globalization is deepening, and countries are increasingly interdependent. In the face of tortuous recovery of the world economy and various international and regional hotspot issues, countries are confronted with many common threats and challenges that no one can tackle alone. Only by enhancing solidarity and coordination and deepening partnerships featuring peace, cooperation, equality, openness, inclusiveness, and mutual benefit, will we be able to achieve lasting stability and development. We hold that security is the foundation for sustainable development of the SCO. All parties, guided by the vision for common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security, will jointly uphold regional security and stability by implementing the Shanghai Convention on Combating Terrorism, Separatism, and Extremism, the Convention Against Terrorism, the Convention on Countering Extremism, and other cooperation documents, promoting counterterrorism intelligence exchanges and joint actions, strengthening legal foundation and capacity building, effectively combating terrorism, separatism, extremism, drug trafficking, transnational organized crime, and cybercrime, and leveraging the role of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Afghanistan Contact Group. We point out that economic globalization and regional integration are the compelling trend of our times. All parties will uphold the authority and efficacy of WTO rules, strengthen an open, inclusive, transparent, non-discriminatory, and rule-based multilateral trading regime. And all parties will oppose trade protectionism of any form. All parties will continue to work in line with the principle of mutual benefit to improve regional economic cooperation arrangements, enhance the Belt and Road cooperation and complementarity of our respective development strategies, deepen cooperation in business, investment, finance, connectivity, and agriculture, advance trade and investment facilitation, and foster new prospects for integrated development of the region to deliver benefits to our people and add fresh impetus to global growth. We stress that the time-honored history and splendid culture of countries are the shared wealth of mankind. On the basis of respecting each other's cultural diversity and social values, all parties will continue to carry out effective multilateral and bilateral cooperation in culture, education, science and technology, environmental protection, health, tourism, youth, media, and sports. with a view to promoting mutual learning between cultures and amity between the peoples. We believe that it is very important for the SCO to expand international interactions and cooperation. On the basis of equality and mutual benefit, all parties will work to deepen cooperation with regional countries, including SCO observer states and dialogue partners, and step up dialogue and exchanges with the United Nations and other international and regional organizations to jointly promote lasting peace and common prosperity of the world. We agree that the Kyrgyz Republic will take over the rotating presidency of the SCO after this summit. All parties will actively support and cooperate with Kyrgyzstan in fulfilling its responsibilities as the president and ensuring the success of next year's summit. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the leaders of all countries and heads of international organizations for attending the summit. I'm grateful for the vigorous support and assistance China has received during its presidency and in hosting this summit. My thanks also go to friends from the media for covering the progress of the SCO and the Qingdao Summit. I'm confident that with our joint efforts, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization will enjoy an even better future. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. The joint press conference now concludes. I want to thank all the leaders and thank you for coming.
谢谢你们，谢谢。